This is the story about how I put all my effort into transforming my oldest son into a mountain biker. The truth is, I love mountain biking, and the thing that I want more than anything else is to share that with Teegan. Despite teaching thousands of people to mountain bike through my videos, there's still one person I've yet to teach, my son. So we decided to embark on a big adventure together, a father-son road trip across the country. The plan? To introduce Teegan to the world of mountain biking while exploring some of the most iconic spots in the USA and reconnecting with old friends along the way. But here's the thing, I'm carrying some personal baggage. My dad loved fishing the way that I love bikes, and I spent countless summer days on the water struggling to find joy in something that just wasn't my passion. I worried that this attempt to share mountain biking might feel the same way to Teegan. Nonetheless, I'm committed to making this journey unforgettable, not just for the riding, but for the memories we'll create together. Whether or not Teegan becomes a mountain biker, I hope this adventure will strengthen our bond and give us both something to remember forever. Join us as we hit the road, face challenges, and discover what it really means to share something you love with someone you care about.
Okay, this is your very first ever GoPro clip of all time on a bike.
You go out to Pisgah, it's like a religious experience.
This trail is incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
First ride.
What? I'm not going down this, bro.
Today is the first stop on our cross-country road trip to teach my son to mountain bike. We're starting in Asheville, North Carolina, where we're going to get Teegan on the trails for the first time, see some friends, and get a mountain bike factory tour.
Here we go. Day one of the road trip. Bike built and ready to rip. What do you think?
Kind of feels like a motorbike, the way that the wheel sits out so far from the handlebars.
Let's do a test ride to the car.
Might need to lift the seat up a little bit.
Oh yeah, there's a button for that. Stand up and push in that lever.
Okay, this one on the left?
Yep. That's called a dropper post. Very nice looking bike.
Yeah. Very bouncy.
Now time to load him in the car. It's gonna fit.
2 hours later.
Piece of cake.
Before we really get this trip underway, I wanted to have a little skills test with Teegan to assess his starting point on the bike. This will be the true test to see if he really watches his dad's YouTube videos. I had him go through a few basic skills just to get a feel for the bike, and I gave him a few pointers to help him adjust. He's a little sketchy, but I think he's got enough to get started. But there's one other thing that every mountain biker needs, which arrived just in time.
So that's basically how I started riding trials. So this is the Crank Brothers M19 multi-tool. This is 19 tools in your pocket, which can basically do everything you could ever need to do while you're on the trail to your bike. This thing is super, super vital. I've been carrying one of these in my pocket for like decades. Jensen sent this to us, and we want to say a big thank you to them because they're helping us out with this road trip. If you want to help us out and support this channel, there's a link in the description below where you can actually get your own M19 tool from Crank Brothers.
The very first stop of the trip was Chestnut Mountain, home of Burn Park. I had looked up some of the trails, and there were a few easy trails in here, so I figured it would be a chill place to kick things off. What I didn't realize that while there were easy trails here, you have to climb up a pretty steep and tight section to get there. Already we were off on the wrong foot, or I guess we were off the bike completely, with Teegan hiking his bike to the top. Not exactly how I wanted to start this trip, but once we got to the top of the mountain, it was fine.
Okay, this is your very first ever GoPro clip of all time on a bike.
The only problem was getting back down.
What? I'm not going down this, bro. Like maybe that second one, but
Just walk to the second one then.
I know, but
It's okay, it's okay.
I know.
This is our first time.
it's
You gotta start somewhere.
We packed up and moved on to Canoga Bike Park, where I knew we could find some less technical and flowy trails.
We have arrived. This is Canoga Bike Park, and this is the first place on the tour where we're gonna get a chance to use our loan pass. So we're gonna head inside and go check in, see what this place is all about. So this is the loan pass, and basically it's a one-time pass that you buy, and then you get access to all kinds of bike parks and shuttles all over USA. So we're gonna check in right now, we're gonna scan this, and then we'll be good to go for all day riding today and for the rest of the trip. Loan Pass has been helping us out, so this is our first ever time using it. Should be awesome.
Canoga delivered the goods, but just like most bike parks out there, you have to earn your turns. I'm all for the fitness that comes with an analog bike, but one thing that I definitely underestimated was the fitness that it requires to be able to pedal uphill repeatedly. Teegan started getting leg cramps after so much climbing, and I knew we were hitting another wall in our forward progress. Thankfully, Canoga had a solution to help us out.
So we finished lap 1, but it was a little bit of a struggle on the uphill. So because my whole goal of this trip is for Teegan to have a really good time and love mountain biking, I got an e-bike for him just to make the uphills a little bit easier, and hopefully this makes this whole ride a bit more fun. I'm keeping it real on the analog bike, but he's gonna try an e-bike for the first time just to get him up to the top of the hill, and then we'll flip it off and he can have the real fun. He's an e-biker now. How was that?
Pretty good. It's I haven't gone full assist just because I like also biking, but it's honestly for beginners like me, it's a good first it's a good intro into it, so you aren't totally exhausted and oh, all my muscles hurt, this is so lame. It's a good assist.
I'm not really opposed to e-bikes at all, but obviously we can only fit so many bikes in the van. In this scenario, where we're trying to get a first-time rider excited about the sport, having the option to remove the suffering of uphill climbing was a game changer for him. I think this is exactly the right tool to help people get into the sport of mountain biking. If anything, it gives them a preview of what mountain bike fitness could feel like, and we got to skip over the hard parts so that he could arrive at the top of the trails fresh and ready to rip.
Good for uphill.
After a big day of riding, we decided that it was time to take a break and switch things up a bit.
So since we're in the area, we're gonna visit Industry 9 Components. These are the wheels that are on my bike and on pretty much every bike that I own. And we're gonna get a tour of the assembly facility from my friend David.
The Industry 9 assembly facility reminded me of a candy shop with all the bright colors and fancy parts. We get so accustomed to seeing the final product online or on people's bikes, but I think it's important to show the behind the scenes of a place like this, just so you can see how many people are working hard to put out high quality bike parts. Even with all the technicians assembling stuff, they do have some level of automation, like this robot that helps tighten spokes and true all the wheels before their final inspection. The highlight of our first stop was meeting up with our friend Seth, who you might recognize from Burn Peak. He's been a supporter of the channel since we started, so it was fun to finally meet up and ride together. Seth had the perfect trail in mind for Teegan to start.
You go out to Pisgah, it's like a religious experience. This is more casual.
Casual mountain bike spot.
But it's proper single track, and so this is going to be, because you were at Canoga and Chestnut?
Yep, yeah, proper bike parks, yeah.
Proper bike, I would say that this is going to be his first real single track experience, and it's a good first single track experience.
That's exactly what we need, because I feel like Chestnut is a place to start, kind of put him in a little bit over his head. Canoga was really nice because it was real flowy and everything. Totally. The uphills definitely kind of crushed him. And I think that was actually one of the mistakes I made, was thinking that, yeah, I can teach him how to ride, because I can teach him the technical stuff, but the cardio, how your body actually responds when you're riding, no chance.
We have some options, but we're going to take him on a pretty smooth downhill. It's a lot of bang for your buck. Sweet. But it doesn't feel as bike parky. It's fun.
This trail is incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
This first couple days of the trip is the most important to me, because I want to get him excited about it so that as we continue on, he continues to build on that. If I don't get it right out of the gate, I'm nervous that he's just gonna switch off,
Yeah.
We've got a renewed sense of momentum after riding with Seth, so hopefully we can carry that to the next stop on our tour, Howler Bike Park in Branson, Missouri. Check out the next video in the series to see how it went.
What's the use of having a private session at one of the sickest bike parks in the Midwest if you can't share it with your friends? So this is already the best day ever.
We're currently on a cross-country road trip, and the whole purpose of this trip is sort of like a father-son road trip. My son Teegan has never really ridden mountain bikes, so this is our chance to not only travel across the country together and spend time together, but also for me to teach him how to ride mountain bikes. And what better way to learn than to go to all the most epic spots in the USA? So far on this trip, we've ridden a ton of spots in North Carolina, and we had an epic session with Seth from Burn Peak. He really helped us find a good spot for Teegan to get extra comfortable on the bike, but also to push his limits just a little bit when it comes to technical riding. So today at Howler Bike Park in Branson, Missouri, the goal is to continue building on the momentum that we created with Seth. But there's only one problem. It's closed. I learned one of the most important lessons about planning cross-country road trips. Plan ahead and don't make any assumptions. We arrived early in the week on a day that they're typically closed for maintenance. Thankfully, our friends at Lone Pass made a phone call and connected us with the builders who were on site for the day. Not only did they let us in, but Hayden Kavanagh, one of their builders, gave us a tour of the park and shuttled us to the top of the mountain all day so we could have the whole place to ourselves. This sounds like a dream come true, but what we didn't expect was the impact today's session was going to have on Teegan's progression.
Do you want to pedal up to the top? Are you good?
I mean, I'm good right here.
The other thing that came in handy today at Howler was a little upgrade to Teegan's setup.
Open it up. So these are the Crank Brothers stamp.
Oh,
These
the
are
shoes. Oh, yo. That's a pretty nice shoe.
These are going to be so much better than the Reeboks you've been wearing on this trip. Like, this is a super, super grippy sole, which is actually going to give you better control with your pedals.
Yeah.
But everything about this, like even the stiffness of the shoes, everything that's gone into this design of these shoes here is going to make you riding bikes even better. Yeah, actually, no, I think these were meant for me.
Hey, wait a minute.
Let's dump those Reeboks and put on some real mountain bike shoes. A huge thank you to Jensen USA, not only for supporting this trip, but for helping my son upgrade his style and for getting rid of these shoes. There's a link down in the description where you can get your own pair of Crank Brothers stamped shoes. Now that we've got the right gear, let's go ride this park.
Here's the thing about Howler Bike Park. Like most people, the only thing I've ever seen online are all the super epic freeride trails they built here. And while they're all awesome, the trails are way over Teegan's head. And to be honest, I don't think I want to risk anything this early in the trip either. But what you don't normally see in videos are the other trails that exist at this park. In addition to the flashy, big hit lines on the Black Diamond trails, this place has plenty of beginner and intermediate trails. We started out on a super flowy trail called Stroller Coaster, and that was the perfect continuation of terrain for Teegan to get comfortable on.
This is already like the best day ever. This is some insane hospitality. So the number one rule of riding bike parks is that you always do like a chill first lap. No matter how good you are at bikes, it's always the best to start with like the chillest spot, because a lot of times people get like really excited and they send it too hard and they get hurt on the first one. So we always ride the chillest run whenever we ride any bike park. And so Stroller Coaster it is today.
Hayden ripped us to the top of the trail time and time again, which delivered the most unexpected result. The fact that we were the only people allowed to ride today meant that when we did find a spot to push his limits, we could stop, hike back up, and session a spot until he got it perfect.
I feel like this is kind of a big deal. This is like an actual trail feature that it's not necessarily scary, but you know, it's not flat. So this is a big step up for him, I think. So you got to ride it 3 times. First time is pre-ride, second time is re-ride, third time is free ride.
3, 2, 1, go.
Nice.
This was the ultimate way to build his confidence on the bike. Easy and safe sections that made him feel like he could conquer something a little out of his comfort zone with no stress of getting in the way of other riders. This is exactly why I typically teach flat ground skills in my tutorial videos and why I encourage people to ride in their neighborhood between mountain bike rides. Repetition on small obstacles like curbs or stairs will do the exact same thing for you, and you can pick a spot where you won't be in anyone's way. I always say that practice makes progress, and that's exactly how we build confidence on the bike. Today's session at Howler was another way to demonstrate this approach, and while it's extremely uncommon to have a bike park all to yourself, it is common to see progression on the bike after a ton of repetition. So what happened after lapping the beginner and intermediate trails at Howler Bike Park? Exactly what I had hoped.
Dude, that felt so much better.
Teegan's confidence began to soar, and he surprised me by casually riding through one of the most difficult and technical parts of the trail. Every other time we came up to a spot like this, he would stop and check out the spot before either walking through it or creeping through at a really slow pace. Now, he was learning to read the trail and pick his lines through, which means that he unlocked a whole new level of confidence on the bike. To build on the excitement of this moment, we pushed things up another notch. Hayden Kavanagh had been shuttling us all day, and now it was his turn to ride.
What's the use of having a private session at one of the sickest bike parks in the Midwest if you can't share it with your friends? This is Hayden Kavanagh, one of the trail builders here, and he's going to show us what Howler Bike Park is really all about.
Let's do it.
We got a tour of the Black Diamond trails earlier in the day, but both Teegan and I wanted to see someone throw down on them. Hayden was more than happy to show us how it's done.
How we do?
That was
Very
sick.
good.
Super sick. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's always good when you have somebody to sort of demonstrate it for you. So I'm just thinking, now that you've seen it, you can probably knock one of those down. This wall ride actually looks totally doable.
I'm good.
While Teegan may not have any plans to hit big features like this, we definitely saw him take another step toward becoming a mountain biker today. Howler Bike Park unlocked some major progression for him, and we can't thank the crew there enough for what was easily one of the most epic days of the trip so far. But even better, Howler is only 90 minutes away from the next spot on our journey, a little town called Bentonville, Arkansas. We're going to try to keep things moving forward by using some of their training facilities to teach him a new skill. Check out the next video in the series to see how it went. My son is going to learn how to do drops today on his mountain bike. He's been riding for less than a week, but we're in the perfect place to pick up a new skill, Bentonville. There's something here that you won't find in most places, and in today's video, in addition to showing his progression on drops, we'll share what makes this place the perfect location for a beginner mountain biker to improve rapidly. Over the past week, we've started our journey across the country on a father-son road trip. As a new mountain biker, he's on a steep learning curve, and I'm doing my best to coach him up as quickly as possible. We've hit some roadblocks like difficult climbs and technical downhills, but we've also found our flow in more ways than one. During today's stop in Bentonville, we're going to try to replicate the success we had yesterday at Howler Bike Park, except this time, we're going to crank up the level of difficulty and teach him to hit his first big drop. What worked well at Howler was Teegan's ability to hike back up and repeat difficult sections over and over. That repetition allowed him to refine his riding and build confidence in areas that he might have skipped on previous rides.
Now, the best part about Bentonville is that although there are plenty of trails to be had, there are also a lot of beginner areas where he can get tons of time practicing on his bike. So that's exactly where we are. We came right to a zone called Slaughter Pen where they have all kinds of beginner and intermediate areas where he can spend a lot of time just feeling comfortable on the bike and building up that basic skill set. I think this is one of the most important parts for any zone that's going to be a mountain bike capital, is that not only it has the sickest riding, but it also has tons of ways for people to get into the sport. And that's what I'm learning sort of the hard way on this trip. I thought that I was going to be able to teach my son how to do all these different skills and drills right out of the gate. But what he really needed more than anything else was to feel comfortable going down steep stuff and going up steep stuff and riding over things that I wouldn't even think about as being difficult, little rock sections and stuff like that. And so having places like this where you can just get comfortable on the bike without having to go down something steep or climb some super steep hill, it's kind of perfect. And the thing that's wildest about Bentonville is that there are trails and little roadways like this everywhere, and biking is encouraged, and you see it showing up in the rest of the community, not just the cyclists that come here to visit. Stop real quick, I want to hit this one little trials line here. I'm just gonna do it with my pack on so we can keep riding. Now, every single Airbnb that I've ever stayed at in Bentonville is always bike themed, which I kind of love. But it is really cool that the community here is actually as behind riding mountain bikes as the people are that are coming to visit. What I really like about this zone is that there's a beginner area, but right next to it is an intermediate area. So as soon as you start feeling confident, you can start to try to push it just a little bit at a time, instead of feeling like you're over your head or you have to do the same thing over and over and over again and you're not progressing. It's kind of perfectly designed for progression, especially for beginners to start out and get better at riding.
How do you feel about doing your first ever drop? You ready?
Let's do it.
It would be easy for me to overwhelm Teegan with all the stuff you need to think about when you're doing a drop, but I think the better approach is to get him comfortable with the feeling of riding off a small drop and carrying his momentum through the landing. Starting super small like this can remove almost all the consequences and just help him build up confidence in the motion.
So we'll start with the mellowest one. This one almost feels like a curb drop off, but it's a great place to practice. So the best part about this one right here is that you're basically just riding off a curb, which you've probably done already. Your speed is going to help you because it's going to carry your body position, and then you're going to kind of dive your front wheel into it. But just ride off it. If your back wheel doesn't clear, you're still fine.
The advice I gave him before dropping in the first time is that he should try to match his wheels to the landing so they both hit at the same time. To do that, he needs to go fast enough off the drop so that his back wheel doesn't hang up on the way down. In this extremely specific scenario, he can just focus on getting the right speed and feeling out that landing process. Even if he does hang up, he'll be able to ride away and start again.
Now what you have to do is do the same exact thing 3 times in a row. And so you'll feel like super confident, and then we'll try to maybe go up to the next height.
Sure, let's do it.
The best part about drops is that whatever's true on a small drop is also sort of true on a big drop. So that's why like working on a smaller drop like this is actually kind of perfect for you, because you can get all the things right. Like you're getting farther out there, you're working on your landing and feeling comfortable. If you go up, the only thing that really changes is that you have more time to adjust your body in the air, but that same feeling is going to be about the same. That's why this spot's just kind of perfect. Maybe give it like an extra pedal this time, so your bike can move faster off the drop, and that way it won't tag on the way down at all.
Sure.
I'm just gonna have him session this drop as much as possible so that he feels super confident, because ultimately it doesn't matter if it's a curb height or a little bit higher or a little bit higher. He's got to get the fundamentals locked in, and what perfect place for him to actually practice this. This is why I'm like having you do it over and over again, because my style of developing skills is like I have to do everything 3 times before I feel like I've got it. So like first time, luck. Second time, okay. But if you can do something 3 times in a row and feel super confident, then you've got it. So when you feel like you land 3 of these in a row, like perfectly stomped, then let's move up to the second one. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And this is why Bentonville rules. We can spend as long as we need sessioning this little drop setup before moving on to the next height. You can see how this process starts to become intuitive to him over time, instead of having him overthink all the steps that he needs to do. Ultimately, riding skills that become second nature are what build the most confidence, and that's why we're starting small and giving him a ton of repetition here. But after a while, the next height looks more reasonable and you can keep building up.
Hey, are there any mountain bike drops around here?
Maybe. All right.
How could this not be a proud dad moment?
Well, let's do it.
Nice, dude. How do you feel? You just did your first big mountain bike drop.
It was pretty good.
You want to go again?
I need to go faster.
Huh. Dude, you know what would be sick is if we did like a father-son drop together. How sick would that be?
You may notice one other thing that's been changing besides Teegan's comfort on the bike. Yesterday at Howler, we got him some proper mountain bike shoes, and today we hooked him up with a pair of Endura Humvee shorts. We're slowly getting him into the right gear over the course of this trip with the help of Jensen USA, and the padding in these shorts should make a big difference in his comfort on the bike, especially when it comes to pedaling uphill in the saddle. There's a link in the description of this video if you want to order a pair of these shorts for yourself.
So you never know who you're going to run into here in Bentonville. I've got Annika Beerton here who came to ride with us for a bit. She's also a mountain bike coach. I'm going to put the link to her YouTube channel and Instagram in the description below. You guys got to check out what she's got. We're going to go for a little ride around the All-American Trail, is that right?
Yep, let's do it.
Sweet.
Awesome.
What did you say, the Dutch word for awesome?
Oh, geweldig.
You just rode the same trails as like a multiple time world champion.
Nice work.
Thank you.
How was that?
Very good.
Yeah.
Annika as a racer was absolutely fierce, like the podium favorite every single time. And the fact that she lives in Bentonville now and she's riding with everybody, and more importantly, coaching everybody, that's like a huge deal.
Yeah.
For anybody that's local here to get trained by a multiple-time world champion. So cool. Thank you, Annika, for coming and riding bikes with us. That was all time. Now, one thing that just recently happened here in Bentonville is that they got hit by a giant tornado during the Bentonville Bike Fest of all times. And so the city has been kind of upended, and there's a lot of construction, there's a lot of damage, and we're gonna do our very best to stay out of the way of everybody that's doing the important work of getting this place back on track. That means we're not gonna get in the way of any of the dig crews, and we're just gonna stick to some of the areas that weren't affected, and we're gonna do our best to also stimulate the local economy by visiting some of our favorite places while we're here. But ultimately, the good news is that the city is definitely gonna bounce back. Bike Fest is gonna be back next year, even stronger than ever. And I think Bentonville is just here to stay. You see all the trails here and it's just so impressive. It's so incredible that this place has been built in a way that not only makes it good for people to come ride and visit, but also makes it so that people can progress.
Oh, that felt so nice.
That was nice, dude.
That felt perfect.
Bentonville was a great place to solidify Teegan's skills and build up a few new ones. But now that we have that sorted out, it's time to put the mountain in mountain biking.
Well, I feel like we know where we're going from here.
That's right, Durango.
In 1 week, we've gone from this
I'm not going down this.
to this.
Nice.
My son is learning to mountain bike from scratch, and over the course of the past week, we've been working hard to bring him up to speed. We're about halfway through a 2-week road trip at this point, and although there have been some tough moments in his progression, we're starting to get him more and more comfortable on 2 wheels. From our first day in North Carolina, the most important thing was to help him get some easy wins on the bike. Finding simple and fun rides was key, like this ride with Seth. I took extra steps to cut out the hard stuff in the beginning too, like the ride at Cayuga Bike Park where I rented him an e-bike so he could breeze through the suffering on the long climbs and just cruise the downhills.
Good for uphill.
It surely didn't hurt to have Howler Bike Park all to ourselves, and the opportunity that opened up was an ability to session tough spots of the trail over and over to build his skills and confidence in a low-pressure environment. Now that he's feeling more comfortable on the bike, the repetition element is becoming more and more important to help him develop skills. He's definitely heard the phrase practice makes progress more than a few times now. The best part about this road trip has been all the time we've been able to spend on the bike, just getting more comfortable on two wheels and learning skills through repetition over the past 7 days. I've made a fair share of mistakes along the way teaching him though, and during this next part of the road trip, I learned another hard lesson. Our last ride was in Bentonville where Teegan made a giant step forward at the beginner skills area. He learned how to hit drops, which is a relatively advanced skill to pick up, especially if you've only been riding for a week. What worked best was having the ability to start small and then quickly repeat the skill over and over again to get used to the feeling. We worked hard to simplify the skill, which can be the biggest challenge, especially with drops. Conquering something like this boosted his confidence and excitement about mountain biking, and I wanted to continue that momentum during our next stop of the trip. So we packed up and drove nonstop to Durango, Colorado for our next stop of the road trip.
We're gonna put the mountain back in mountain biking today. We're in Durango, Colorado. Yesterday, we left Bentonville, Arkansas super early in the morning and had an epic drive across basically the entire country to arrive here in Durango, where there are mountains and there are all kinds of epic trails to ride. This is an iconic location in the US and important in the mountain bike history of the US, as this is really one of the first places where mountain biking super went off. All the pros moved here, world championships were here. Durango was where it's at for a long time and still is. So we can't have a road trip across the country without stopping in a place as iconic as Durango. And here we are at Horse Gulch. This is a pretty basic beginner area that you can ride right in downtown Durango, and this seems to be the perfect spot to get adjusted to the elevation and get ready for some real proper mountain biking.
The main difference that we can expect now that we're actually in the mountains is going to be much more dramatic changes in the steepness of the trail, plus the impact that higher elevation is going to make on our climbs. We started by riding in a place called Horse Gulch, which is a relatively mellow climb and descent, but after riding at sea level for the past week, we could definitely feel the impact. When we finally did make it to the top of the trail, I wanted to hop up this staircase, and by the time I got down, I was totally out of breath. Even though the transition to elevation and this particular climb was a struggle, it was totally worth it.
Guess how far you just climbed?
1,000.
539 feet, which is the most we've climbed on this whole adventure so far in one shot. Nice job.
This trail was fun and flowy, and it connected to a super cool section that allowed Teegan to take another giant step forward. A week ago, he was stressed on short, mellow downhill sections. Now, he's dropping in on things like this steep, rocky downhill roll into the trail.
Nice. Dude, you made it look easy.
This felt like a big moment for both of us as he stomped it with confidence. Now, because we're trying to stay on schedule, we decided to keep it moving. As it turns out, the iconic trails of Moab, Utah are only 3 hours away from Durango. I thought we could keep our momentum going from this ride, and Moab would be the perfect next step in his progression. The mecca of mountain biking, perfectly timed with our massive upward trajectory. But as it turns out, I was completely mistaken. Rolling into Moab had me filled with excitement, especially as the rock formations started to come into view. My dream of riding slick rock with Teegan was within reach, only a few moments away. We got settled into Moab and prepared for our first ride, a warm-up loop called Rusty Spur. This zone is highly recommended to acclimate to the area, so I figured it would be a great way to ease into the new style of terrain. It's quite a bit more technical than what we'd been riding so far, but I figured that we wouldn't have any issues. And maybe we wouldn't have if we hadn't just spent the past week on a punishing schedule of nonstop riding and nonstop driving. At this point, we'd driven over 2,000 miles, and when we weren't in the van, we were smashing uphill climbs. The exhaustion became apparent, and I realized it was time for an unscheduled break. Thankfully, Moab is home to an epic national park that we could cruise around and check out some beautiful sights. We parked the bikes and loaded up our hydration packs for the day, making our way up to the Delicate Arch and a few other iconic zones within the park. I didn't realize it, but I needed a little break too, and the day off was necessary for both of us to reset and recover from the past week. Our latest shipment from Jensen USA couldn't have been timed any better with this stop. Teegan got a USWE Outlander hydration pack. As we've been heading west, the terrain is getting drier and the temperatures are getting higher. Staying hydrated along the way and having a place to store his tools is necessary, and this pack is going to work out perfectly. If you're looking for a lightweight hydration pack, this is a great option, and there's a link in the description where you can get your own. After the previous day's experience, I decided that Teegan needed a little bit more time and I didn't want to push it.
A trip to Moab wouldn't be complete without a little session at the Slick Rock Trail. Now, it's a little early in the morning. I thought maybe it'd be cool to do a solo sunrise Slick Rock session. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Teegan needed a little bit of rest. He's had a big week of learning to mountain bike, so we're gonna give him a rest and I'm gonna have a little session to myself.
I'm glad that I didn't try to drag him out here because the trails were more advanced than I remembered. Tons of steep climbs and zones that required absolute focus to remain safe. It was awesome and fun for me, but I don't think we would have had the same experience if he came with me. I was glad to let him sleep, and I got a recharge of my own during this ride.
That sunrise Slick Rock session was everything I needed. I think I picked the right time to get out here because it's starting to get hot already and it's not even 8 o'clock in the morning. Believe it or not, that was actually my first time riding Slick Rock, and the one thing that I didn't expect were all the super steep uphills. It's definitely not a chill trail. It's not the roller coaster type trail that you usually see in videos, but all the climbs make all the descents worth it, and the views were just epic the entire way. I just couldn't get over it. What an amazing, amazing trail. This is a must-do trail. If you're in for the climbing, it's 100% worth it. There's even a little bit of a practice loop, which is more than enough. It's a couple miles around, I think, and gives you a really nice taste for everything that there is. So if you're just doing a sunrise session and you're in a hurry, that's an excellent one to go for. It is pretty amazing to think back at everything we've accomplished in the last week and change. We've gone all the way across the country for the most part, and Teegan has gone from being pretty sketchy on two wheels to feeling pretty confident and starting to ride some more technical terrain. It's amazing to me that I really wasn't sure how things were going to go on that first day, but now he gets better and better, and as he gets more comfortable on the bike, the winds are coming a little bit faster, and that's sort of where I thought we would start this trip, but I'm glad that we've gotten to this point because it's easier to build now that he's got that in place.
Of all the places we've been on this trip so far, I knew our next stop was going to be one of the best, so I was glad to have Teegan rested and refreshed for it.
Pedaling uphill is fun and great exercise and makes you work for those turns and downhills, but our next stop on the trip is slightly more chairlifty.
So this is your first time on any chairlift?
Yeah.
We're headed to Park City to ride with the best dad in mountain biking and one of my best friends, Eric Porter.
I don't think you could get any better hospitality.
Teaching your kids to ride mountain bikes can be a lot harder than you'd expect. Beyond the unlimited patience you need to bring to the first stage of the process, there are plenty of other details that I didn't consider when I first set out to teach my son Teegan to ride. Thankfully, Eric Porter is a seasoned veteran in this department and had plenty of insight to share with us when we visited him in Utah. We're over halfway through a cross-country father-son road trip, and in addition to hitting all the best mountain bike spots in the country, we're also visiting a few of my friends along the way. This stop on our trip was mostly for me, but Porter had some good advice to share with Teegan as well. While we've been riding up and down trails and focusing on his technical skills, Porter brought us to Woodward Park City to work on something else that would impact his riding skills in a major way. After using our loan pass to check into Woodward Park City, we rolled over to the pump track area where Teegan could learn the basics of pumping his bike to generate speed without pedaling. This is important not only for generating speed, but for reading and responding to the terrain with your bike and body. Porter taught Teegan an in-depth lesson on this section, and then we headed up the mountain. So far on this trip, Teegan has had to pedal uphill to earn his turns. Now that we're out west, he's going to get a chance to ride his very first chairlift. Anxiety was high as he loaded his bike on the lift for the very first time, but thankfully, he had me and Porter on either side to make sure it all went smooth.
So this is your first time on any chairlift?
Yeah.
But the most important thing for Teegan now that we're riding bigger trails is protection. Today's shipment from Jensen USA couldn't have come at a better time because it had a pair of Endura MT500 knee pads in it. These knee pads are lightweight and low profile, so it won't bother Teegan when he rides, but they'll protect his knees during a crash with their D30 padding. There's a link in the description if you want to pick up a pair of your own. After an incredible ride at Woodward Park City and multiple laps on the chairlift together, we headed back to Porter's house. Teegan was tired from the past week and a half on the road, so Porter and I decided it was time for a dads-only ride. I wanted to ask him some questions about teaching your kids to ride, and since he's the best at it, I figured this ride would be the perfect time to ask.
You know, I've learned quite a bit on this cross-country road trip, teaching my son to ride. It's been an interesting experience because where I thought we were going to start and then where we actually are right now and how he's progressed along the trip has been different than what my expectations actually were. I've learned a lot, but I feel like you've been through this whole thing, and I guess I just want to know, like, what's the best advice for being a parent, getting your kids into mountain biking, and I think most importantly, keeping your kids in mountain biking?
Yeah, well, I think what you just mentioned about the experience versus expectations, that's a great place to start with advice. So whatever you set up for this is the ride we're going to do, try to think about a way that the reality and the experience exceeds the expectations, right? Because if you're like, this is the best ride ever, and you know it was an okay ride in their mind, that's not a good experience, right? Whereas if you just set the bar low, we're gonna go out and have fun, and you don't promise the world, but then there's this surprise waterfall that you go to or something like that, and so that most of the time when you take them out, the experience is even better than they expected it to be. That's a big win for them, and it's gonna keep them wanting more.
Yeah.
All right, we got a lot of mosquitoes, so we're gonna move on to the next spot, and I'll give you guys some more advice then. But yeah, when the mosquitoes are bad and you're riding with your kids, keep it moving. A little bit of bug spray maybe. So yesterday was rad, riding with Teegan at Woodward and creating that experience for him, and you've been doing a lot of that this whole trip, right?
Yep, absolutely.
But this morning, we're out just the two of us, riding at our speed, at our pace, at your skill level. How's that feel?
Way better. It's been a lot of patience. It's been a lot of just like, you know, walking hard sections and like making it be okay to not do the difficult thing the first time around and not pushing him over his level, you know, like just letting him feel and build confidence on the bike.
Yeah, so we'll get to the kind of my number one tip a little bit further down, but right here it just made me think how much fun we're having together riding. It's awesome riding with your kids. That's the dream, right? But for a long time you're riding with them, and so you don't get to ride this is the sport that you love. You're introducing it to them, but this is the sport that you love, and so it's important to get those rides with your friends without your kids. And so it makes you appreciate and remember why you're putting in the time with the kids. When you're riding slow, you're not doing what you want to do. And so it's really important to just get those rides in with your friends when you get to ride the way you want to, the speed you want to, on big trails, and have those experiences too, because that in the end is why you love mountain biking. And you're riding with your kids, being patient so that at some point they can do that with you and you can share these trails with them. So yeah, make sure to ride with your friends and go fast the way and have fun the way you like to.
So what's like one of the things that anybody could do to sort of set their kid up for success other than maybe having the right equipment? Like what else would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, bike setup and checking that stuff before you go out. They don't know how to, check their tire pressure and all those things. So doing the best you can to set up their bike so it feels good, so their fingers can reach the levers, the brake levers, and they can confidently ride the bike. Super important. But every time that you ride, make sure that, you're setting it up so it's not the end of the day and they've already had a whole day and they're tired and whatever. If you can, do it when they've got energy, and feed and water them before you, just like your plants, get them a good meal and good hydration before you go out, because once you're out, like, you're just maintaining, and like definitely keep them eating and drinking while you're out and lots of snacks. But before the ride, get them food and water, so they're not going into it hungry and grumpy and hangry,
This whole road trip, it's been, 2 weeks, and maybe I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, just like 14 days riding mountain bikes in the epic spots, which like sounds like such a cool thing. But like, I didn't really consider his experience maybe of like, I'm going to have to do what for 14 days. And I think that was a big learning point for me on this trip.
Yeah, I mean, a 2-week riding everyday road trip is normal for you. For him not mountain biking, that is not normal at all, or for most people.
No.
And so that's really the number one thing with taking your kids riding and getting them, like, playing the long game of getting them to fall in love with riding. which is what happened to us, as kids on our own. But in this case, it's just remembering that we're creating an experience for them. Like, this is not about us or for us. This is giving them the best experience ever when they go riding. So they have so much fun, and really part of that is actually less is more. So if we're doing awesome and we're like, let's say, Woodward and do 3 laps and they're like, I want more. And you can tell they're getting a little tired or like pulling the plug then instead of like just going. The kids don't know when to stop.
Yeah.
And so they're just going to keep charging and charging. And it's much better to stop them early to where they want more than to just keep going until they're like, we all know how quick that, like, it's like a light switch, they go from having the best time ever to it's the worst day of their lives. And so just like ending the experience of like, oh, that was awesome, all right, let's go get ice cream or go do whatever we're going to do next, before they're actually done and before they have that classic last run crash, when they're tired and they're hungry. And so you finish the ride before there's a meltdown.
That's a good that's good timing, like knowing when to bail on the ride before it gets to the point where you have to bail.
And eventually I've noticed, my kids around 12, 13, 14, like Milo's 14 now, at a certain point they start asking for, I want more challenge. And so that's where I start giving that to them. Okay, we're always moving the carrot a little bit further. If you do this ride, then you can ride the next ride, which is really cool, but you got to work up to it. And so kind of giving them that stuff to work up to, that you get this experience when you put in the work and you're ready for it. So kind of always thinking through that stuff and planning it out, and just in the end creating an experience for them. It's not for you. You get the reward much later when when you see them having fun, though. Like that's it. And like I said, you still need to make time to ride with your friends at your speed outside of riding with the kids. If you only ride with them, you can you're just a guide basically. And you can lose the fun for why you mountain bike, because you are trying to create an experience where they might fall in love with it. So but it's I play the long game and hope for the best. And who knows what your kids are going to get into. You just want to introduce them to experiences and see what they fall in love with. But that gives you your best shot of having a kid fall in love with bikes.
So maybe don't do a 2-week-long road trip back to back.
Or mix it, keep the ride small and mix in fun stuff.
Which we have.
Too.
We've done that.
So,
for sure. Yeah.
But I saw him yesterday. He was like, you could see he was getting those feelings and having fun. So I don't think he blew it. No, it's worked, but it's maybe not the most optimal way to do it. It's just the fastest way to. We've all been there. And that's every single parent that's got their kids into riding has been like, I want to show them this experience. And you or your wife too. Like, we've all taken our wives on rides that we shouldn't have, that they weren't ready for yet. And we paid the price, and we hopefully learn from it. But we still keep repeating those mistakes too. But the bottom line is, there's something that we love and we're trying to create an experience for them. But sometimes, you just got to think about it a lot.
A giant thank you to Eric Porter and his family for the hospitality. And now it's time for us to move on to the last few stops of our trip. Next stop, Idaho, and then home to Oregon. We've been riding mountain bikes nonstop for 2 weeks, but the real question is, will my son ever want to ride with me again after this? We're in the home stretch of a 2-week father-son road trip, and in those 2 weeks, my son Teegan went from absolute beginner status to legit mountain biker. We made it past the struggles of starting out, and now it's time to enjoy the fruits of our labor, and a few chairlifts too. We left off in the last episode at Eric Porter's spot, where we had some epic rides at Woodward Park City and the surrounding area, and now we're heading north to Idaho. Since Teegan has chairlifts figured out, we're heading directly to another bike park, Tamarack. Tamarack was quiet on the weekday that we visited, which meant that we got plenty of time to rip laps and max out our time on 2 wheels. This chairlift has quite the view too, and even the basic trails have little elements like this that are worth exploring.
Tamarack had the goods. So many good trails, so fun, flowy. You conquered the blue one like it was nothing. It's the perfect place to progress. This place is all time, and we definitely need to come back. But for now, let's head over to Boise. I got a surprise for you.
After our session at Tamarack, we drove back down toward Boise, just in time to catch our friends at Deity before they closed up shop for the day.
This is the headquarters of Deity Components, And if you've watched any of my videos, you know that pretty much every single bike I ride has something from D80 on it. And while I'm not officially sponsored by them, these guys are family, and I couldn't be more stoked to see their success.
How you doing, buddy? It's so good to see you.
Hey,
What's up, man? I'm Eric.
So we're gonna have a quick look inside the D80 compound, maybe get Teegan's bike built up with a couple extra parts. But how sick is this spot? Can we go over to check out the warehouse?
Most definitely.
We got a bike that needs a little bit of D80 love.
I would suggest that we put some flat track pedals on it. There'll be a larger platform for more stability for his feet, and they won't be so concave like a Super Villain or a T-Max, so you'll be able to adjust his feet a little bit better.
Okay.
Potentially try out some different grips. I can even give you guys a couple different pairs.
Okay.
You can take them, swap them out. Because just grips can change. Contact points are massive. The grips themselves can change the feel of the bike. And then obviously playing around with bar rise, stem length. All right.
It's like Christmas in here. Look at this place. Dude.
Bars.
Do you ever get lost in here?
Hey, I'm not back here boxing and shipping, so honestly, I have to think about where everything is at. So bear with me. This is a bronze bar. We'll hold it up to the bike, but we can also put copperhead and bronze on there.
That's gonna
See
look
what
cool.
looks
That'll
like.
look really cool with the brown.
Could look dope.
Yeah.
But like when I'm talking about detail, it's like all that two-tone nano.
yeah.
That's all part of the metal and the process. That's not a graphic or a sticker applied to it. So all of the levels of everything that's on here, it's just so much more than you're gonna find on another handlebar. I mean, there's 7 steps in the manufacturing. It's just the look of it, let alone the internal and the engineering of it. So putting as much as we can on a product to make something that feels absolutely special and amazing.
Look at this. Flat track pedals. That's gonna look so good on that bike.
Big, non-offset, so symmetrical pedal profile, big footprint. They're gonna feel totally different than these pedals. And I love the black hat, but this is gonna feel pretty phenomenal for them. So this is the newest grip, and that's the Megatat. Feel that? You haven't felt this one.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's all preference. This is the Super Cush.
Yeah, of course. The
This guy will be 2 millimeters smaller than this,
Mhm.
and you probably are gonna love that.
That's my favorite grip right there. I have that on every single bike.
Which is like amazing because it's 34 mil OD, and you would think that your hands, you got pretty big hands though too, especially for your height. No offense to your height, but you got big hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But the Super Cush, I mean, that's the Megatak. Does it feel good?
Yeah, I kind of dig it.
It's people are loving it. You would think that this is like if Ben Cathro was testing it and helping with the design of it, and he's 6'7", and it's his dream grip. So I thought this was like a 6 foot to 6'7", 6'11" type of a grip. But man, we've got people who are 5'5" that it's like their new favorite grip. I mean, it just feels different. Seamless transitions, so you don't have hot spots that you build on the palm of your hand or on your fingertips. Recessed half waffle, so it's not serrating your hand like a typical moto style grip that has a half waffle. Ribbing that doesn't just collapse under your fingers, but the thing is, and lose is like structure, but the thing is, it allows a little bit of compression on the side, so it's not like can opening your thumb.
Yeah.
So it's anatomically like structured to function properly with a hand. So it's a bit chaotic here, but what's cool about it is that, and we just get a chance to come in here and just create really dope imagery. I thought when we built this, I dreamt to have a photo studio.
Yeah.
So that we can just create all of our own stuff, never have to farm anything out, and I can think of the most ridiculous ideas, and we can just come in here and just create it.
There is one universal truth in the sport of mountain biking, and that is getting new parts for your bike makes everything better. A giant thank you to Eric, Sadie, and the whole crew at Deity for taking such good care of us. In addition to the new Deity gear, we also got our last package from Jensen USA, a set of Continental tires to take on the loamy goodness of the Northwest trails ahead of us. We paired these tires with Orange Seal to make them tubeless, which was easy enough for Teegan to install. Hit the link in the description if you want a closer look at the specific tires we chose. Most important, we had to test out all of our new gear before continuing the journey. We had a quick session at Eagle Bike Park to dial everything in. The spot's right downtown and super fun to ride. I just wish we had more time here, but we had to keep it moving.
Everywhere we've ridden's had like such different terrain, which kind of makes this whole thing cool. Like every ride, it's like desert, alpine, Moab rocks. So sick.
The last stop on our way out of town was at Ian Hyland's photo gallery opening at the Pushin' Port. Ian is an old friend and a legendary mountain bike photographer. I was actually there when this shot of Eric Porter was taken almost 20 years ago. Now, you'd be wrong if you thought this trip was going to continue the same way. One major thing changed dramatically as soon as we crossed the border into Oregon and arrived at Mount Bachelor for our final ride of our summer road trip.
What a difference a day can make. Yesterday it was dry, dusty, and hot, and now we've got snow. We're at Mount Bachelor, another location on the Lone Pass Network, and we're gonna ride finally in the state of Oregon. We're nearly home.
After a little parking lot jam and a quick swipe of our Lone Pass, we were above the snow line on a chairlift. We've been riding in boiling hot conditions this whole trip, but for some reason, Oregon didn't get the memo. We accidentally took the big lift up to the top for more advanced trails, but had no problem cruising down them to the other zone that was easier to lap. Teegan put together all of his skills from the trip on this ride, including stomping this drop with full confidence. This trip has been full of firsts, but we also had to squeeze in a last. The last blockbuster on Earth, which is right down the street from Mount Bachelor. How random is this spot? They're somehow keeping the dream alive for video rentals, although I didn't manage to find any bike videos in their selection. As we cruised down the final stretch to the end of our trip, I wondered if Teegan would ride with me again after this. In 2 weeks, we've pushed through thousands of miles on the road and thousands of feet of climbing and descending on the bike. I honestly don't know who learned more on this road trip, but I do know that I wouldn't trade the ups and downs of these past few weeks for anything. Being able to share what you love with someone you love is an incredible feeling, and I have to say a huge thank you to Teegan for being open to the idea of taking on such a huge trip. It was fun to travel together and watch him learn so many things, both on and off the bike. So would I do it again? Absolutely, but I'd probably focus on the riding in a few specific spots instead of adding in the punishing full-day drives between the spots. If we just focused in on Bentonville or a bike park for the same amount of time, I wonder what difference that would have made. But the million-dollar question, did Teegan ride with me after the road trip wrapped up? The answer is yes. We hit up Gateway Green in Portland for another pump track session this summer, and with any luck, we'll be back on the trails together again soon. While 2 weeks wasn't nearly enough time to get him totally into the sport, I do think it was enough to show him what the sport is all about and equip him with the confidence that he can join me on future rides anytime he wants. A giant thank you to everyone who supported us on this road trip. Jensen USA, Lone Pass, and Marin Bikes helped us out big time, and our friends along the way made all the difference. Thank you for watching this road trip series. I hope you enjoyed sharing this journey along with us.